we are facing a new pandemic of loneliness in the 21st century.
And why it's important for you? Why did you decide to paint it?
Lonely people use animals to replace human beings.
I love it.
One morning you wake up and realise that you have no friends.
Should we start from beginning?
Today Art in Adelaide is visiting Gallery of South Australia to see the exhibition by Tom Phillips and to ask him a few questions. Hi Tom.
Hi.
I'm so excited to see you here in the Gallery of South Australia. I believe that this gallery is a place when each artist would be happy to be exhibited. Could you please tell us how did you manage to get here and to have this beautiful display?
Well, how I got here, I won the Guildhouse Fellowship, which is in partnership with the Art Gallery of South Australia and the Ramsay Foundation. So I won that in 22, and that's a 2-year project to do research and do a body of work, which is finally exhibited here in the Art Gallery of South Australia.
When looking at your works, I would say they don't look like average painting on the wall. They make the viewer stop, look, think and try to understand what's hiding behind this canvas. And they obviously, all these paintings are linked by some theme. Could you tell us what the theme is and why it's important for you? Why did you decide to paint it?
Well, it's all about loneliness in this contemporary society of this post-structural world that we live in. My project was to focus on the collapse of neoliberalism and the de-industrialisation of factories. And so I focus on the fear of loneliness and abandonment. And that's basically what this work is about the fear of loneliness. And I think we are facing a new pandemic of loneliness in the 21st century.
So you decided to depict some social issue.
Yes, I describe myself as a social realist artist and who paints in an expressionist style.
Tom, you mentioned that you did some research for this project. What was this research about?
Well, my proposal for this fellowship was the impact of neoliberalism and the decline of neoliberalism and the collapse of factories as well, and how that has impacted society, and also focus on the abandonment and loneliness of that society. And I went around visiting groups in Salisbury and down south, down the Yurkova way where I originally came from. And you see a lot of closed factories, well, especially when you go down south. You go past on the train, you'll see the abandoned factory of Mitsubishi, and then on the other side you'll see the abandonment of the oil refinery that used to be there. And between both of them, you had about 3,000 workers employed in their peak, and suddenly that's all gone, and that has an impact on society. So I was exploring that aspect of people being abandoned and feeling lonely.
And so all these people on your paintings, are they real people, or you drew them from your imagination, or that's real persons that were sitting for you, posing you?
No, I sort of, I come up with an idea and I get references from the internet, and then once I got the figure drawn out crudely on the canvas, I file away the images and work from my feelings and imaginations. But I use so they're more generic people instead of actual real individuals. But they come from the stories that I hear. So I collect stories, and I then get my ideas from those stories. So a collage. So one figure might be 2 or 3 figures mixed together to create the pose I want, and then I'll take the painting from there.
And did it take lots of preparation for each painting? Do you do some sketches, or you just work immediately on canvas, just intuitively?
I sometimes do a little sketch in my journal just to get the idea. I still keep it vague. And like I said before, then I'll find images off the net or from magazines to news of the particular pose, and that's how I create my drawing. I draw up on the canvas, and then I do an underpainting, and I go through that whole process of building up with the mark making.
Tom, can you please tell us about this painting? Who is this lady? Why she's laying on her sofa? And what is the story which you wanted to tell us with your painting?
I came up with the idea with a figure on a couch, and I wanted her to be laying on the couch on Saturday night. I've told her that lonely Saturday night, and so basically, you know, she should be going out, but she's at home alone. So I drew it out, and as I'm drawing it out, I noticed it was very similar to Monet's Olympia. So I added the cats in because I wanted the cats in lonely people who use animals to replace human beings, and it was a good reference with that.
Yeah, these cats, they definitely serve to make her feeling better, to fill this gap in her soul. They have quite human-like faces that look like best friends of this lady.
Yes, when I was drawing it out, I wasn't happy with boring slippers that she had on the picture I had. So I thought I needed something different. And as I was walking back to my seat to think about it, I saw a postcard of Rob Taylor's painting with the pink bunny slippers, and I said, that's it. And there's still more of a story of that because I call them Rob Taylor's bunny slippers, but they're actually his partner's Anna's slippers, and she's done a painting with bunny slippers of her self-portrait. So I thought it would be a good reference joke to put into of my two teachers that have influenced me, putting a reference of about their artwork into my painting. Told her that, you know, lonely Saturday night that she's alone, got her bottle of wine, and she's surrounded by her cats, and it could be more cats off the picture plane there as well. Also, I put a white cat in there because I used to have a white cat myself.
It's gorgeous. Your style, it's quite remarkable, quite recognizable with all these huge figures with bright and dark colors combined, and your strokes are so three-dimensional, so bold, almost sculptural. Did you work on this style for purpose? Did you develop your style, or it just came naturally to you?
I always had this natural aspect of being an expressionist artist and art making, and the subject has always been the same for me, because I used my background as a person, because living down south in the 80s, you know, there was high unemployment and all that, so I experienced all that. So in this series, I used some of my past experiences to help me to identify with the people who I wanted to paint about.
Tom, did you do art always, starting from early years? Did you study art somewhere, somehow?
Yeah, I've always been painting and drawing through my childhood. I was always doing something with my hands, making models or doing painting and drawing. Didn't know art schools existed at that time because of my family background of being working class. The only images I saw was my heavy metal albums or Disney, so I always was copying them. So when I saw a special on Sydney Nolan, I decided to become an artist, and I went to Central School of Art, won a scholarship there, and went full-time. So that was between 92 and 97, and there was advanced diploma. That was the highest at that point.
And what are your favorite materials? Which paints, which tools do you use?
Oil painting is my favourite medium. I generally use my hands, rags and palette knives with some brushes. I especially like getting in with my hands. That's why I think I work big, so I can actually use my body. And and I use the palette knife to scrape back because I do an underpainting in colour, and then I will scrape back to allow some of that paint to come through. So I build up in layers, but keeping it very fresh and mark making. I always want to keep that.
And do you always paint people and your paintings reflect some social issues, or did you paint something more traditional like landscapes or still lifes?
Well, in art school I did a bit of landscape and still life because that was part of the projects, but I've always been passionate about social issues. As my background is from that in politics in my family. And because of my dyslexic, I always went from pictures, and I always was fascinated with history and social justice, so I thought it was a natural progression to become a social realist painter.
And you mentioned you studied at Adelaide School of Art, and did it help you to grow as an artist, and did you bring some very helpful skills from school?
They taught me a lot. They opened up a whole new world for me and introduced me to new artists I've never seen before, which now some of them come my favourite influences, painters like Francis Bacon and Philip Guston and many more. And the teachers at Central, well, they were just fantastic teachers like Rob Taylor and Platten and Chris Orchard, and that I think they were some of the best teachers in the state, and I still think they still are. And they've always been highly supportive of my style and my art, and they still support me today.
And do you think that formal art education is compulsory for artists, or it depends from one person to another?
I think it depends to one person to another, but I think going to an art school and learning new things, you don't need to always reinvent the wheel all the time. Like before I said, they show you artists that you might not stumble, or might take you longer to stumble across, and you start discovering new artists, movements, and understanding the art history is, well, for me that was important because I do reference a bit of art history in my work.
Now we're standing next to another work by Tom, which consists of 3 separate paintings, but they all are linked in one idea, and it's so full of emotions and always screaming about the loneliness of this man. It's absolutely stunning work. And Tom, can you tell us how did you get idea of this unusual painting?
Well, I always wanted to do a triptych, but I didn't want to do Francis Bacon, so I originally came up with the idea that I'd do 2 figures on either side of the same man and have this void between this black void, but I thought I wanted something to experiment with a bit of text as well, because I think with the fellowship the idea is you can experiment a bit and push your own boundaries, and text is pushing my boundaries. So I came up with this line of listening to some people and some podcasts, and like one morning you wake up and realise that you have no friends. And I thought, oh, that's a perfect statement. And I thought a lot of people experience that through their lives, of moving to a new suburb or city, or in this case, I was focusing on a man. What motivated me, that this man's just probably been just retrenched from work, and his whole life evolved around work. So there's a lot of people who live like that. Their whole social life, their whole life is wrapped up in the identity of their work. And now he's sort of woken up one morning and realised that he has no friends and all that. So that's why I wanted to catch in this painting, and it's also a bit of a reference to Monk's painting Between the Clock and the Bed as well. So I used a bit of that as a motivation in the painting.
And as you mentioned, Guildhouse, how does Guildhouse help you in your artistic career?
Well, Guildhouse is important organisation for artists, I think. Besides, they provide you with public cover and insurance, but they also help you out of going for grants. They offer mentorships, which I have one in before, and they also run the fellowship as well with Ramsey and the Art Gallery, and they are always very helpful in advice of any issues you got. They always will give you good advice, and the staff is just very helpful and very friendly.
And Tom, do you have some creative plans for nearest future? Are you going to work on some other body of works to exhibit somewhere?
We're having some shows next year in Adelaide. I think I will continue on with this subject because it's just so big and you just won't be able to get done 1-2 paintings. I think it's an endless subject that I can be painting for the rest of my life, and hopefully I'll be showing some more works here in Adelaide, and I'll put some applications for interstate, so I'm waiting for the results for those. So hopefully that will come fruit soon.
Do you plan or did you think about submitting your works to some art prizes?
Yes, that's always been ongoing. So I sort of like what I paint, say this year, will be going for next year's prizes, because then the oil paint will be dried by then.
And which prizes did you choose?
I generally go, hopefully I'll aim to go for the Archibald, but I mean there's no guarantee you'll get into those those prizes. There's some other ones, Musselbrook has a prize, but it all depends on, it's just like a lottery, and you get in or you don't get in. And
it's always a game.
Yes, it's always a game. So it's very hard to say what prizes I'm going to go for. I just it's a numbers game. You go for heaps, and you probably only get into about 2 or 3.
And do you plan to prepare some work specially for these prizes, or just submit the existing ones?
I just submit the ones that I have done the year before, which I work in a series. I don't sort of like do paintings for the individual prizes. I think then you'll be just locked in of maybe doing bad paintings, because you can't guarantee you'll get into those prizes.
Thank you, Tom. It was really interesting, and I hope that our viewers would have time to come and see this exhibition, which will be run till the end of October.
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah, so you're very welcome. Come and see this beautiful display. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you very much.